Kendrick Lamar is executing the most brutal psychological takedown in hip-hop history, and the game is collapsing in real time. Industry insiders are leaking that K.Dot's silence isn't strategy, it's a death sentence, and Game just signed his own career obituary on live television without realizing it. Everybody thought this was just another rap beef brewing. Game talking reckless, throwing subliminals, claiming his throne. That was the surface-level story everyone repeated. But new leaks from TDE's inner circle reveal something way more disturbing. This isn't beef anymore. This is a masterclass in psychological warfare where the victim is destroying himself while his opponent watches from the shadows like a silent predator. The whole narrative is twisting because what we're witnessing isn't competition. It's a public mental breakdown disguised as bravado. And the most terrifying part? Kendrick hasn't said a single word, not one bar, not one tweet, just dead silence. And that silence is somehow louder than any diss track could ever be. December 10th, 2025. Mark that date, because that's potentially when the Game's career ended, and he didn't even see it coming. He sat down with Shannon Sharpe for what insiders are now calling the most desperate interview in hip-hop history. His eyes wild, his voice shaken with barely controlled rage, and he declared himself the greatest rapper from the West Coast, above Ice Cube, above Snoop Dogg, and most shockingly, above Kendrick Lamar. TMZ captured every second of it. Game's jaw clenched so tight you could see the muscle twitching. His fists balled up under that table like he was holding back from swinging at ghosts. This wasn't just making a claim. This was begging, straight up begging for attention from someone who's treating him like he's invisible. And here's where it gets truly disturbing. Sources close to the situation revealed to Complex that Game rehearsed this speech for days before filming. He knew exactly what he was going to say. He planned every word. This wasn't some off-the-cuff comment or heat-of-the-moment flex. This was calculated, premeditated, a desperate attempt to force Kendrick's hand and make him acknowledge his existence. Think about that power dynamic for a second. Game spent days preparing a speech just to get Kendrick to notice him. That's not confidence, that's obsession. The internet's response was immediate destruction. Within 60 minutes, DJ Academics weaponized the clip across every platform. Within 3 hours, every hip-hop channel had dissected his delusion frame by frame. Within 24 hours, the Game became a living meme representing desperation incarnate. Twitter was brutal. One viral tweet read, "Game really thought he did something, but he just looked like a man yelling at clouds." Another said, "This is what happens when relevance fades and you can't accept it." And Kendrick Lamar? Complete radio silence. Not a tweet, not an Instagram story, not even a cryptic subliminal bar hidden in a random verse. Nothing. Dead air. And that silence is somehow louder than any diss track could ever be. But if you thought the Shannon Sharpe meltdown was rock bottom, what Game revealed just days ago proves this spiral is getting worse. December 20th, 2025, less than a week ago, Game appeared on the Back on Fig podcast and made a claim so delusional that even his own Day One fans turned against him in the comments. He claimed he could have ruined Kendrick's pop-out concert. Let that marinate for a second. While Kendrick orchestrated the most important cultural moment in West Coast hip-hop since Tupac was alive, unifying Blood and Crip sets that have been at war for literal generations, bringing peace to a city drowning in violence, performing Not Like Us with every LA legend standing beside him on that stage. Game is on podcasts claiming he chose not to attend because his gang politics would have caused chaos. Translation, I wasn't invited to the most significant LA event in 30 years, so I'm going to pretend I boycotted it for noble reasons. The mental gymnastics are Olympic level. Complex and Vice both covered the interview, and the receipts are absolutely damning. Game admitted he would have caused violence while Kendrick brought peace. Game admitted LA doesn't revolve around him anymore while pretending it's his choice. Game accidentally confirmed he's jealous of an event that happened without him and didn't miss him for a single second. Social media eviscerated him. One post went mega viral, so Bloods and Crips put their differences aside for Kendrick, but Game's too dangerous to attend? Make it sense. Another said, Game really said he would have ruined a peace rally. That's the flex? Being a threat to unity? That's psychotic. Fans started pulling receipts too. They dug up old interviews where Game bragged about LA being his city. They compared his past confidence to his current desperation. Side-by-side screenshots showing the fall of grace. It was a digital autopsy performed in real time.
And once again, Kendrick said absolutely nothing.
But here's what leaked from inside sources at TDE. Multiple people confirmed to Hot New Hip Hop that when Kendrick's team saw Game's podcast interview, they weren't angry, they weren't threatened, they were laughing. Genuine, gut-busting laughter, because they know Game just admitted his own irrelevance on camera and tried to frame it as power. That's not strategy, that's self-sabotage. Now let's get into the motive, because this is where everything starts clicking into place like a psychological thriller plot. Game's been dealing with serious relevance problems for years now, and the desperation isn't new, it's just reaching critical mass. His career trajectory reads like a cautionary tale about what happens when you can't evolve past your peak. Think about it. These dudes went from platinum albums and genuine West Coast king conversations to podcast circuits and Instagram live rants. Back in 2006, Game was selling 500,000 first week. The documentary was a legitimate classic. He had Dr. Dre's cosign, 50 Cent's mentorship before that exploded, radio spins, MTV rotation, the whole machine behind it. People say he was pulling in millions annually during that peak. Sold out shows, endorsement deals, respect from the culture. But now, he's reportedly struggling to move 20,000 units independently. Shows getting canceled due to low ticket sales, having to defend his legacy on every platform that'll give him a microphone. Meanwhile, Kendrick just dropped GNX with zero promotion, no rollout, no marketing campaign, and it debuted at #1 while breaking streaming records. Kendrick's preparing for the Super Bowl halftime show in front of 115 million viewers. Kendrick's hanging the Dr. Dre, Snoop, and actual West Coast royalty who still return his calls. Kendrick's being celebrated as the voice of an entire generation. That kind of contrast hits different when you're on the losing side. That can spark some real envy fast. And honestly, it's not even subtle anymore. You can see it in Game's eyes during these interviews. There's this desperation, this hunger not for competition, but for acknowledgement. He doesn't want to beat Kendrick. He wants Kendrick to see him, to say his name, to confirm he still matters. And it gets worse for him when you look at the pattern. Game has a documented history of picking battles he can't win. It's like he's addicted to conflict, but allergic to victory. Let me walk you through the carnage. The 50 Cent beef nearly ended his career before it really started. That was supposed to be his big brother, his mentor, the man who put him on. Instead, it became a 5-year war that damaged both their legacies, but hurt Game way more because 50 had the machine, 50 had Eminem, 50 had Dr. Dre staying neutral. Game had anger and mixtapes. Then there's the bizarre stuff. He attacked Gorilla Black on his first album. For what? No reason anyone could identify, just random aggression. Then Beanie Siegel, unprovoked. Then Meek Mill out of nowhere. Then shots at Joey Badass that made 0 sense strategically. Then he inserted himself into the Drake versus Meek situation and somehow picked the losing side. Every single time, he's choosing chaos over chess, emotion over strategy. Now, Kendrick. And this is potentially career-ending because Kendrick is different. Kendrick doesn't just win battles, he erases people from the conversation. Look what happened to Drake. Drake was untouchable. Drake had the numbers. Drake had the machine. Drake had a decade of dominance. And Kendrick dropped Euphoria, then 616 in LA, then Meet the Grams, then Not Like Us, and executed a complete cultural genocide that Drake still hasn't recovered from months later. Not Like Us became the anthem of an entire summer. It unified a coast. It became bigger than the beef itself. West Coast legend Glasses Malone confirmed what everyone's thinking in a recent interview. He said, and I quote, "Game will never directly diss Kendrick because he saw what happened to Drake." Let that sink in. Even people in Game's own circle know that if he really comes for Kendrick with a full diss track, he'll get the Meet the Grams treatment, and his legacy cannot survive that level of exposure and destruction. So, Game is stuck in this psychological prison of his own making. Too proud to stay silent and accept his position in the hierarchy, too scared to actually fire real shots because he knows the retaliation will be biblical, too desperate to stop seeking attention because his entire identity is wrapped up in being relevant, too irrelevant to get the response he craves from someone who genuinely doesn't think about him. It's not beef anymore. It's a cry for help disguised as competition. It's watching someone drown in real time while refusing to grab the life preserver because grabbing it would mean they're admitting they're drowning. But here's the part that really hits different when you step back and look at the human cost of this whole situation. We're not just watching a rap beef or competitive trash talk. We're watching a man publicly unravel. And there's something genuinely sad about that when you strip away the memes and the hot takes. Game built his entire identity around being a West Coast legend. From Compton, blood ties, street credibility. That wasn't a persona, that was his life. And for a window of time, he was that guy. He had the respect, he had the cosign from the legends, he had the throne. And now he's watching it slip through his fingers in slow motion, while someone younger, more talented, more culturally significant, takes everything he thought was his birthright. That's gotta mess with your head. That's gotta create some real psychological warfare internally. Imagine spending 20 years building a legacy, only to watch someone come behind you and do it better, faster, cleaner, with more impact. And not just do it better, but make your entire era feel like a footnote in the history books. The leaked footage from the Shannon Sharpe interview shows something beyond anger. If you watch Game's eyes, there's pain there, there's desperation. You can see a man grasping for something that's already gone. His voice cracks at certain moments when he's trying to assert dominance. That's not confidence, that's someone trying to convince himself as much as the audience. And honestly, the saddest part is the trajectory. Game had everything. The talent was real. The documentary is still considered a classic by most hip-hop historians. He had moments of brilliance, but somewhere along the way, he became more focused on conflict than craft, more obsessed with attention than artistry. And now he's reduced to begging for scraps of relevance from someone who's living in a completely different stratosphere. This isn't the first time we've seen this pattern in hip-hop. Legends who can't accept that their time is past, icons who can't evolve, kings who refuse to step aside gracefully. And it always ends the same way, undignified, desperate, sad. The culture moves on, and they're left screaming into the void, wondering why nobody's listening anymore. That's what makes Kendrick's silence so devastating. It's not disrespect, it's indifference. And indifference is so much worse than hate, because hate means you're still in the conversation. Indifference means you've been removed from it entirely. You're not even worth the energy of a response. You're background noise. And for someone like Game, whose entire identity is wrapped up in being acknowledged, that indifference is psychological torture. Now let's dive deeper into the receipts, because while Game is out here on his podcast tour of desperation, TDE decided to respond, and what they did is so brutally disrespectful that it might be worse than if Kendrick had actually dropped a diss track, because they didn't even give Game the respect of words. They sent messages through pure dismissal, through memes and archives, through treating him like he's not even worth engaging with language. December 20th, 6 days ago, J-Rock, Kendrick's day one brother from Watts, the man who literally put K-Dot on and walked with him through every step of his come-up, responded to Game's lies about wanting to sign Kendrick back in the day. And his response was a GIF, not a statement, not a paragraph, not even a sentence, a GIF of an extremely ugly, distorted, mocking face. No caption, no explanation, just pure visual representation of "you look stupid and everyone knows you're lying." The internet absolutely lost it, because J-Rock didn't even give Game the respect of a rebuttal. He just posted an image that said "you're ridiculous" without using words. That's not a response, that's dismissal. That's treating someone like they're beneath language, like they're not even worth the effort of constructing a sentence. And coming from J-Rock, who's never been the type to engage in petty social media beef, that silence-breaking moment hit like a sledgehammer. Fans immediately started screen recording it, making compilations, adding their own commentary. One viral post said, "J-Rock really said, 'I'm not even gonna type words for this clown,' and just dropped a meme. That's the most disrespectful thing I've seen all year." Another said, "When your childhood friend who never gets involved sends you a mocking GIF, you've officially lost the plot." But J-Rock's meme was just the opening act. What TDE President Punch did next was the nuclear option, the executive kill shot, the move that exposed Game's entire narrative as fiction. Punch, the man who discovered Kendrick, the executive K-Dot calls his Phil Jackson, the architect behind TDE's entire rise, didn't argue. He didn't debate. He didn't write a long caption defending his artist. He simply resurfaced Last Real Nigga Alive, the 2009 Kendrick track that documents, in Kendrick's own words, Game ignoring him when he was coming up in LA.
Let me break down why this is psychologically devastating. Punch didn't create a narrative, he presented evidence, like a prosecutor in a murder trial calmly laying out exhibits while the defendant screams and flails in the background. He let Kendrick's own archived lyrics from 15 years ago do the talking, lyrics that directly contradict everything Game's been claiming about wanting to sign him, wanting to mentor him, wanting to put him on.
The song's been on YouTube since 2009. Fans always knew the lines, but Punch recontextualizing it in this moment in response to Game's recent lies turned it into a smoking gun. The message was crystal clear. You're lying, here's proof from your own timeline. We don't even need to argue because the truth is literally archived on the internet for anyone to verify. Hot New Hip Hop covered Punch's post extensively. Fans started making side-by-side comparisons. Game's recent interviews claiming he tried to help Kendrick versus Kendrick's own bars from 15 years ago, saying Game wouldn't even acknowledge him. The contradictions were impossible to ignore. Game got caught in a lie so blatant that even his supporters couldn't defend it. And here's what makes this even more calculated. TDE didn't flood the internet with responses. They dropped 2 precision strikes, a meme from J-Rock, an archive from Punch. 2 moves, surgical, efficient, devastating. Then they went back to silence because they don't need to do more. They don't need to engage in a back and forth. They made their point, provided receipts, and walked away while Game is still screaming into the void. Meanwhile, fans on Reddit's Kendrick Lamar subreddit started connecting even more dots. They pulled up old interviews with Game where he name-drops everyone from the West Coast except Kendrick. They found tweets from years ago where Game was subtly shading K-Dot. They built entire timelines showing a pattern of jealousy that's been brewing since Kendrick started getting recognized as the best from the coast. One Reddit thread went viral with the title, "Game's been jealous of Kendrick since Good Kid, Mad City, and here's 15 years of receipts." The post had video clips, interview quotes, subliminal bars, social media screenshots. It was a digital dissertation on envy disguised as competition. Complex interviewed several West Coast artists off the record, and multiple people confirmed the same thing. Game's always been bothered by Kendrick's rise, not publicly, but in private conversations, in studio sessions, in moments when he thought the cameras weren't rolling. The jealousy's been there for over a decade. It's just now reaching a boiling point where he can't hide it anymore. But yo, let's rewind for a second and talk about something that got lost in all the Shannon Sharpe and podcast drama. December 6th, 3 weeks ago, Game dropped his first Gangsta Grillz mixtape thinking he was about to shake up the culture, thinking he was about to remind people he's still got bars, thinking maybe this would be his moment to reclaim some of that lost glory. On the track Chrome Hearts, fans immediately detected what they believed were Kendrick's subliminals, bars that could be interpreted as shots, lines that seemed targeted but just vague enough to maintain plausible deniability. You know how it goes in rap. The internet went into full investigation mode. YouTube channels started doing bar-by-bar breakdowns. Twitter threads started connecting dots between lyrics and recent events. Reddit built entire timelines analyzing the possible disses. And then, something absolutely humiliating happened. Game hopped into Instagram comments. Yes, the comment section. Not even a proper post, not a statement, not a video. He started desperately replying to fans claiming he wasn't dissing Kendrick. Think about the power dynamic of that for a second. Game drops a project, fans think he's throwing shots at Kendrick, and he has to defend himself in comment sections against accusations of dissing someone who hasn't even said his name. This is the rap equivalent of throwing a punch at someone who isn't looking, missing completely, and then apologizing to the air for attempting it. Hot New Hip Hop documented the pathetic display with screenshots. Fans started making memes of Game arguing in comment sections. The jokes wrote themselves. One viral tweet said, "Imagine dropping a mixtape and having to clarify you're not dissing someone. That's not power, that's fear." Another said, "Game really in comment sections like, I wasn't talking about Kendrick, I swear." Meanwhile, Kendrick hasn't thought about him in years. Kendrick's response to the Chrome Hearts potential subliminals? Still nothing. Complete radio silence. Because why would a king respond to someone shadowboxing in his kingdom? Why would someone preparing for the Super Bowl even acknowledge someone on Instagram Live defending themselves against ghosts? But this whole mixtape situation reveals something deeper about Game's psychology. He wants to diss Kendrick, you can tell. It's eating him alive, but he's terrified of the consequences. So he drops bars that are just vague enough to maybe be about K-Dot, but also vague enough that he can deny it if anyone asks. It's the most cowardly form of beef, subliminal warfare, where you won't even commit to the warfare. And let's be real, this isn't the first time Game's tried this strategy. He's been dropping Kendrick-adjacent bars for years, little comments in interviews, slight jabs in verses, always with an escape hatch, always with plausible deniability, because he knows that if he actually comes out and says this is a Kendrick diss, he's committing to a war he absolutely cannot win.
Remember what happened to Drake? Drake actually had the machine behind him. Drake had streaming dominance. Drake had a decade of commercial supremacy, and Kendrick still erased him from the conversation with 4 songs, 4 surgical strikes that completely shifted the culture. Not Like Us became the anthem of the summer, while Drake's responses were forgotten within days. Game watched that happen in real time. He saw how Kendrick operates, how he waits, how he calculates, how he strikes with precision. And Game knows he doesn't have Drake's resources, doesn't have Drake's fan base, doesn't have Drake's commercial appeal. So what chance does he actually have? That's why he's stuck in this purgatory, making claims that are bold enough to get attention but vague enough to deny, doing interviews that are provocative enough to go viral but carefully worded enough that he can walk them back. It's the strategy of someone who wants war but knows they'll lose, someone who wants to be relevant but knows they're not anymore. And the saddest part? It's not even working, because Kendrick's silence is louder than anything Game could say. The culture has already decided who won this before it even became a real beef. TDE's meme and archive responses got more engagement than Game's entire mixtape. The conversation isn't did Game make good points, it's why is Game still trying? And this story keeps unfolding with way bigger implications than just one man's fall from grace. What we're seeing here is a masterclass in how silence can be weaponized in modern hip-hop, how indifference is more powerful than aggression, how letting someone self-destruct is more effective than attacking them directly. Kendrick Lamar has rewritten the rules of engagement in rap beef. Traditionally, if someone comes at you, you respond, you fire back, you don't let disrespect slide. That's been the code since the beginning of hip-hop culture. But Kendrick's operating on a different frequency entirely. He understands that responding gives relevance to the challenger. It validates their existence. It puts them in the same conversation as you. By staying completely silent while Game spirals publicly, Kendrick's sending a message to the entire industry. You're not even worth my energy. And that message is more devastating than any diss track could ever be, because it removes Game from the competition entirely. He's not an opponent. He's not even a rival. He's just noise in the background while Kendrick operates at altitude Game can't reach. The bigger conversation here is about legacy and evolution, about knowing when your time is past and how to navigate that reality with dignity. Game had a moment, the documentary is still celebrated. He had impact, but he's struggling to accept that his moment has ended while someone else's is just beginning. And instead of gracefully accepting his place in history and building on his legacy through mentorship or different ventures, he's grasping desperately at relevance through conflict. This is a warning for anybody in the game. The culture is unforgiving, the internet is merciless, and if you can't evolve past your peak, if you can't accept that younger artists will eventually surpass you, you'll end up looking like Game does right now, desperate, delusional, diminished. What makes this even more tragic is that Game could have taken a different path. He could have embraced being an elder statesman. He could have supported the new generation. He could have been the bridge between eras. Instead, he chose jealousy. He chose conflict. He chose to position himself as Kendrick's rival when Kendrick never saw him as one. And now he's trapped in a narrative of his own creation, where he's the villain and the victim simultaneously. The responsibility here falls on multiple levels. Yes, Game is making terrible decisions, but the fans who enable this behavior by giving him engagement when he acts out also share blame. The podcasters who give him platforms to spread delusions without challenging him contribute to the problem. The industry figures who stay silent instead of pulling him aside and giving him real talk are complicit in watching him destroy himself.
Kendrick's situation is a wild, calculated example, but it's also a blueprint for how to handle desperate challenges. Don't feed the narrative. Don't give energy to manufactured beef. Don't validate people who are seeking relevance through your name. Just keep operating at your level and let the contrast speak for itself. So, here's where we are right now and why this story is about to get even more intense. We are currently in the eye of the storm, the quiet before something potentially catastrophic, because there are questions hanging in the air that nobody can answer yet, but everyone's thinking about. First question, is Kendrick saving game for the Super Bowl? Think about it. 115 million people watching the biggest performance of Kendrick's career. The entire world tuned in. What if he drops a surprise bar during the halftime show that ends Game's career in front of that massive global audience? It would be the most public execution in hip-hop history, and knowing how Kendrick operates, how he calculates every move 5 steps ahead, it's not impossible.
Second question, why is Game doing this now? What triggered this spiral? Is it pure jealousy of Kendrick's Super Bowl slot? Is it desperation because his last project didn't perform? Is it a calculated attempt to generate buzz before his own album rollout? Or is this something deeper? Some behind-the-scenes situation we don't know about yet? Something personal that pushed him over the edge? Third question, and this is the big one. What happens when Game actually commits and drops a full diss track? Because right now he's dancing around it. Subliminals, implications, vague claims. But what happens when he crosses that line and makes it explicit? Does Kendrick have to respond at that point? Or does the silence become even more lethal? Does TDE step in? Does Dr. Dre pull Game aside? Does the entire West Coast turn on him? Fourth question, who else from TDE speaks next? J-Rock sent a meme, Punch sent an archive, but we haven't heard from Schoolboy Q yet. We haven't heard from Ab Soul, we haven't heard from SZA, and we definitely haven't heard from Dr. Dre, who has relationships with both artists. What happens if one of them weighs in? What happens if Snoop Dogg, who's been mentor to both, picks a side publicly? Fifth question, and this is the conspiracy theory that's gaining traction online. What if Kendrick already responded and we just don't know it yet? What if there's a bar on GNX that we missed, some double entendre that seemed like it was about something else but was actually aimed at Game? What if Kendrick's been playing chess while we're all watching checkers? What if the response is already out there and we're just too focused on the obvious to see it? The horrifying reality that nobody's saying out loud is this. We are watching a man lose a battle that only he is fighting. Game is giving interviews, dropping mixtapes, claiming crowns, explaining absences, defending comments in Instagram sections. Meanwhile, Kendrick is preparing to perform for over 100 million people on the biggest stage in American entertainment. The power imbalance is cosmic. It's not even a fair fight. It's a lion being bothered by a fly. And here's what should genuinely terrify Game if he's paying attention. Kendrick Lamar is always 5 moves ahead. He predicted Drake's moves before Drake made them. He predicted the industry's response before the songs dropped. He predicted how Not Like Us would dominate before it was released. He predicted the Super Bowl before it was announced. So if Game spent the last month painting targets on his own back, loading magazines, writing his own obituary through desperate interviews, then what has Kendrick been doing? What's he been planning? What's he been calculating? The internet is watching this unfold in real time. The West Coast is watching. The entire culture is watching. And Kendrick Lamar, he's still saying absolutely nothing, which is somehow the loudest threat of all. Because that silence before Drake wasn't random. It was calculated. Months of subliminals, months of tension. Drake getting comfortable, Drake talking reckless, and then euphoria. 616 in LA, Meet the Grams, Not Like Us, a complete cultural annihilation that Drake still hasn't recovered from and probably never will. So every single day Kendrick stays quiet, Game should be getting more nervous, not less. Because if Kendrick's silence before Drake was strategic, what does this silence mean for Game? Here's what we know for certain. Game is spiraling. Kendrick is unbothered. TDE is amused. The culture has already picked sides, and something is coming. Maybe at the Super Bowl, maybe on a random Tuesday, maybe never, but the tension is building. The anticipation is suffocating, and Game is running out of ways to stay relevant without actually committing to war. This isn't beef, this is psychological warfare. This is watching someone self-destruct in slow motion while their opponent watches from a distance with complete indifference. And that indifference might be the most brutal weapon Kendrick's ever used. Stay locked in because this story is far from over. More details dropping, more clues surfacing. Reports say Game's planning another podcast appearance next week. Rumors swirling about a possible diss track, speculation about Super Bowl surprises. The culture is holding its breath, waiting to see what happens next. So drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Kendrick will ever respond? And do you think Game is destroying himself or building towards something we can't see yet? Is this desperation or strategy, delusion or calculated attention seeking? Make sure you like this video, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single update, because we're covering every twist as it happens. I appreciate you for watching. Stay safe out there. And remember, in hip-hop, silence can be louder than any diss track. Sometimes the most powerful move is not playing the game at all.